I thought I'd do a little review or a sneak peek at this book I just picked up, The Complete Works of Velazquez, published by Taschen. I was talking with the painter Juan Jr. Ramirez about it, and give me an idea to maybe have a flip through and share it with people. It's an excellent book. Taschen also put out an excellent book on Caravaggio. The reproductions in the Caravaggio are a little bit better. They seem like they were almost scanned from the paintings, where these are looking more like just really great high-res photos. So you can take a look at the design and some of these reproductions, which are great. Pope Innocent X, the one that's further along, is even better. Here's a more early painting. You'll see over his career how his obviously drawing gets better from the early part, but also how he has a tendency more to soften the features while still keeping this sense of the big form. So it's broken down into 8 chapters, lots of writing, lots of stuff to read, and catalog of works at the end. So I picked up this book up in Porto at the FNAC there for €50, which is a pretty good price. I think it was half price. Some introductions here. The great painting of Juan de Paray, his assistant, who was actually a painter as well. I can take a look here at the top. Juan de Paray's painting of himself. He did this as a warm-up for the painting of Pope Innocent X. And then a later portrait of King Philip. Of course, a lot of his work is done in service of the crown. A whole section on reproductions. You always seem to discover new pieces by these great artists. This is interesting. It doesn't look like a Velazquez. It's almost photographic. Pretty soon all the paintings will be done by Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Velazquez. This is a great portrait. Interesting too, just as a painter, to look at how he's cropped his portraits, his head and shoulder portraits. Quite a bit of space around them. My own work, I personally like to have a little less space on top on the head and shoulder portraits, but gives us this larger space, gives a sense of the weight pushing down on the person. Again, it's more of a personal feeling or personal idea of what you want. So of course he was born in Seville in 1599. Family name, his parents are from actually Portugal. The boy's grandparents, Diego Rodriguez de Silva and Maria Rodriguez, had moved to Seville from their native Porto, which is where I bought the book. Probably within the previous 2 decades, at a time when the political boundaries between Spain and Portugal had been removed by the expansion of the Spanish monarchy. The Portuguese crown was then held by the Spanish king, who would lose it, together with much of his power over the world, within Velazquez's lifetime. His teacher was Francesco Pacheca. Here's one of his paintings. And of course, he was greatly influenced by Caravaggio, young Velazquez and Caravaggio. By the early 17th century, most European artists had been influenced by Caravaggio's naturalism. During this period, Giulio Mancini wrote that our time is much indebted to Michelangelo di Caravaggio for the coloring that he has brought out and is now followed quite generally. Yeah, of course, Caravaggio cast a huge shadow over the following centuries. Rembrandt, Rubens, many artists influenced by him. So here's some of his early works from around 1517 when he's 18 years old. And the drawing not so great. Color is okay, but you know, this quickly changes. He gets pretty good, pretty fast. This head here from two versions of this painting. One called The Supper at a Mouse. You'll see it up ahead. Musical trio from 1617, so he's 18 years old here. Moon Frying Egg from 1618. So even from there to there is a huge improvement. I love these guys with the thumbs up. Reminds me of my brother when we were kids, he used to put his thumbs up in the pictures. Maybe one of his first masterpieces here, The Water Cellar from 1620, so he's 21 years old. That's very much a Caravaggio-esque head there. And of course the lighting is totally Caravaggio. There's some question as to whether or not these inserts here are actually by Velazquez. I haven't read the text on this here, but perhaps it talks a bit about that. Same with this one here. Makes it into a religious painting. Nice saints. Around 1620. St. Paul, St. Thomas. It's a really nice reproduction. So then he entered the court quite young. You can see here, I mean, his drawing is pretty good, nice and clear, very much influenced by Caravaggio and that crispness that Caravaggio has. You're not worrying too much about surface detail, thinking more of the big form and then the medium forms, not too much of surface texture, let's say texture of skin or anything like that. This is something that he's kept throughout the entire period of his life. Here too, you know, these are all these smaller forms are just nicely shown, described. Not really too much about the texture of the skin. So as you can see, some really fantastic reproductions. This is a later painting, 1628. Of course, he did all those paintings of the dwarfs and the buffoons. Here we're back into like 1620s, 2 or so. Some of his first paintings of Philip IV. Look at the idealization here. This figure's about 8, maybe 8.5 heads high. It's heroic proportions you'll see in comic books today, but not so much in contemporary realist art. See here where his foot used to be, kind of coming through. What happens to oil paint over time is that it becomes more transparent. So if you paint a light over a dark, over time the light will become more transparent and you'll start to see what's underneath. So as painters, we have to take care to make sure that we really cancel out those darker bits if they're going to be overpainted with a lighter color. He didn't really do that. So we have here what are called the pentimenti. Pentimenti means sin in Italian, and these are the sins of the artist. Of course, he's got one of the great equestrian portraits in the Madrid Prado, where he where the horse has 6 legs rather, because of his pentimenti, his sins. Interesting here, just speaking as a painter, to see some of the campitura color, the color ground coming through that warm brown. That was so commonly used by the old masters. Yeah, this is not realistic at all, right? Look how small that head is on top of that huge body. So now we're to 1626, 1628. His meeting with Rubens and first journey to Italy. It's fantastic Bacchus there, of course, influenced by Caravaggio's Young Bacchus. As you see, a lot of text here about his trip to journey. In August 1629, Velazquez left for Italy, preceded by letters of recommendation to the Spanish ambassadors in the states he was to visit. The king had advanced on account 300 ducats to him for paintings not yet completed, and ordered that he should continue to receive all his emoluments for the duration of his absence, the length of which was not even specified. So he was obviously well liked in the king's court. So, Titian's greatness and Velazquez's freedom. Of the works painted by Velazquez in Italy, Pacheco, his teacher who had written a lot on painting, mentions only a famous self-portrait now lost and the fine portrait of the infant Maria. Palomino, writing in the early 18th century, adds that the master painted in Rome in 1630 the Forge of Vulcan and Joseph's bloody coat brought to Jacob. So we have a detail from the Forge of Vulcan. Palomino states further that Velazquez, in the days he spent in Venice, made many drawings, especially from Tintoretto's large crucifixion at the Scuola di San Rocco, and that he painted a copy of another work by the same master where Christ is depicted giving the communion to his disciples, possibly the one also in the Scuola di San Rocco. Velazquez had most likely been acquainted with Tintoretto's crucifixion since his apprentice days, for Checo owned what he described as part of a preliminary cartoon for it. That's interesting. And was familiar with the whole composition from an engraving, probably the one made by Agostino Carracci in 1589. Pacheco admired the dexterity and daring of Tintoretto, although he could not recommend him as an example to follow. Christ and the Christian Soul, now in London. Another version of Separata Mouse. There's this great painting of the drinker's Bacchus. Those of you interested in contemporary artists might want to look at Zoe Frank, who quoted this painting in one of her works. For me, she is definitely one of the contemporary greats, someone to look at. Really, really great stuff. Love this little dog. And here's the full painting of the Forge of Vulcan. Portrait of the Infanta Donna Maria, Queen of Hungary. Of course, all those royals were related, right? We can tell by their facial features. Maybe a little bit of inbreeding. Temptation of St. Thomas Aquinas. So he returns to Madrid 1631, so he's over in Italy for a couple of years at least. have some reproductions. Rubens is painting of Philip IV. This is a great head. It would be great to copy this. So we started to see, you know, some of that slight softening, but he's still thinking more of the you know, the expression of the form. You know, the big form, how it's lighter up here and darker down here. You know, the form guy eyes, which often in traditional painting were conceptualized to be more spherical. And these wonderful gray halftones balanced by the reds. Christ and the Cross from the Prado. Lots of paintings of the King and Queen. I'm not such a big fan of these, but I guess the good thing is that they're by Velazquez. A lot of them, ones you see, are just by lesser known artists. You'll see a lot of this, like he's cleaning his brushes on the background. And a nice fold out and some close-ups of the detail. The Surrender of Breda from 1634. All these guys looking out here. You'll see that a lot. Usually it's just one guy looking out, who is often just the painter himself, but here we go, 1, 2, 3 guys. So you have Philip, I was going to say Philip III, this is Prince Balthazar Carlos on horseback, and then other equestrian portraits. Here's the painting I was talking about with the horses with the extra legs. I guess it's not 6, it's just 1 extra one, so 5. Again, you can see the pentimenti there. We get into now the dwarfs and the jesters. This quote here: "It is certainly true that Velazquez lavished the most mysterious element of art on the dwarfs, simpletons, and buffoons that he portrayed as though they were gods, or rather, as beings through which the divine shines forth." Fantastic portrait here, a great character. Same with this one. The dwarf Francisco Lexano. Detail of the buffoon buffoon Juan Calabasas. The dwarf. But as you can see, great reproductions. Some hunting portraits here. Look at that dog. It's really great. The god Mars. Maybe a little too posed to be Mars, but fantastic painting nonetheless. There's the whole paintings of the dwarfs and the gestures. Dwarf here, Don Diego de Acedo El Primo. Again, we have that cleaning of his brushes in the background. So, section 6, portraits, main themes. Perhaps it is through this continuous observation of the same sitter that Velazquez acquired early on his skill in capturing a likeness, in penetrating and revealing not only facial features, but the depths of the soul reflected in them. Some wonderful close-ups in this part here. Portrait of a man from 1635. An interesting discussion here of his approach to painting. That Velazquez left this work unfinished, it would be necessary to include that he chose to do so at a point when he had so strikingly expressed on the canvas the act of artistic creation. It appears indeed that Velazquez did not let himself to superimposing, as it were, his own sketch of the likeness on the king onto the representation of the head sculptured by Montanus. That's an upcoming painting. In actual fact, he fashioned the portrait of the latter into a vivid image of the artist as creator, whose hand bends materials, whether clay or pigments, to his expressive purpose, heightening rather than disguising the earthy textures, accentuating the superiority of the image achieved over the natural appearance it portrays. So it's this portrait here. The sculptor, and then the unfinished other part. Let's see if we can find it here. Flip forward a bit. There we go. So just a discussion just of why Velazquez left that unfinished. And flipping back, looking at some more of these wonderful portraits. This is another tricky artist will have used, this big, bright forehead compared to everything else down here to give a sense that there is a lot more light on the head than there actually is. And also it keeps the sense of the big form. Unfinished, you can see the color of the ground. The golden brown ground. There's a self-portrait from 1640. The whole painting of that earlier portrait of Philip. Some religious works of his. St. Anthony Abbot and St. Paul the Hermit, 1635. And then his wonderful coronation of the Virgin in the Prado. The painter Isabella Gardman, if you follow her on Instagram, did a copy of this, a really great copy, and she's posted on her Instagram the steps she went through. She copied it from life in the Prado. Great job. And on to the fantastic portrait of Pope Innocent X. This portrait of a pope is at the same time one of the most powerful evocations of person and personality ever achieved by Velazquez, even in the portraits of his most regular sitter, King Philip IV. No reproduction can convey the almost physical impact of the original, painting the stern, ugly old man seated in an enormous chair. It's a great reproduction though, this one. As I said earlier, that painting of his assistant, Juan de Paria, was painted as a warm-up for this, apparently. So obviously he had to return to Italy. Another painting by Juan de Paria is quite a good painter. Cardinal, here's the painting of Juan de Paria. And then the painting of the Pope, which is in Rome at the Dori Pamphili Gallery. There's another painting of it by his workshop, it says. But yeah, just thinking about those early paintings, I mean, he was not, you know, he wasn't a genius, young genius. He worked hard and got really good. The last work, 1651 to 1660, he passed in 1660 at 61 years old, so pretty young by today's standards. And of course, this is a detail from his great Las Meninas, his self-portrait. Another detail from Las Meninas. Again, another detail from the same painting. And look at this calligraphy here. You know how he just loosely described. It's not high realism where he's copying everything. He's just interpreting it, and you know that allows the focus to remain on the face. There's a late portrait of Philip from 1655. More portraits of the children. Here's the Las Meninas. He's a really great dog painter. Mercury and Argus from 1659. Self-portrait, and then a catalogue of works here. Again with detailed descriptions for all of them.